Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Friday's episode of Trending, brought to you by Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING for 10% off. We've got a number of stories to dive into this morning, so let's get straight into it. Good morning, Richard. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Not too bad. End of the week, but we've still got some madness to cover.
We
Doesn't
do.
go
We
away,
have
does it?
a nice combo of very interesting stories and outright insane stories to cover this morning that kind of sum up the world that we live in. So we're going to start
Yep.
by, I haven't eaten yet today, so I am hungry. So we're going to start in Hungary, I believe.
You're starving, yeah. Starving Marvin. Hungary withdraws from International Crime Court during Netanyahu visit. I wonder why. So they've gone, we want to bring our friend over, so we're just going to withdraw from the ICC because he's a
Yep.
wanted war criminal.
Well, he invited him over,
So
didn't he? The day of the when they first put the arrest warrant out, months and months ago, he invited him to Hungary, didn't he, to prove a point?
this is getting to the point now where it really has to stop. Something's got to give now because it's beyond parody, and obviously it's not funny in any way, shape, or form when you see what it's leading to. Hungary is withdrawing from the International Criminal Court (ICC). Its government has announced. A senior official in Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government confirms this hours after Israel's leader Netanyahu, who is sought under an ICC arrest warrant, yeah, he's a wanted war criminal, in Hungary for a state visit. We've got to the point now where the wanted war criminal can wander around the world, go wherever he wants, pretty much, without being arrested. But then Trump's administration's come out saying, "Oh, we're getting all these top FBI
Yeah.
list ticked off." You've got one sitting in your office, the biggest one.
Yeah.
Orban had invited Netanyahu as soon as the warrant was issued last November, saying the ruling had no effect in his country. Well, there might be a reason for this, because what a lot of people don't know
Oh, who's he
is
connected
that
to then?
I wonder who he's connected to. Let's have a guess.
I don't know.
Yes,
Your buzzword these days.
my buzzword these days, and it's not because I want it to be the buzzword these days, because it is the buzzword of the days, and luckily it is because people are starting to take notice of this, including Candace Owens, which you have to give her credit for, has finally spoken out about these guys. Rabbi ridicules Hungary opposition party leader that claim Orban captive of Chabad. I wonder if he is,
Wow.
considering that Netanyahu definitely is, Putin is, and Trump is. These guys get everywhere. These guys are the men in black. Unified Hungarian Jewish Congress head Rabbi Shmolo Koves rejected and ridiculed Jobbik party leader Marton, no chance, not even try his surname, claims that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban was controlled by Chabad in a conversation with the Jerusalem Post. And this was, I think it was 2000. This was 2012. This article came out. The other one came out yesterday. About him inviting him over and withdrawing from the ICC. 2012, they were talking about these guys controlling all of these guys. So you've got Orban, who's controlled by them, and you've got Netanyahu, who's controlled by them. How long does this need to go on before people start to actually take this into account? But as I say, Candace Owens, who's got one of the larger platforms for whatever reason, and as much I don't agree with what she talks about, she does finally talk about Chabad and brings them to light. So, the more we talk about these things, the more they trickle up or trickle down or trickle sideways, depends on the way you look at it. And they get spoken about. And at the end of the day, it's egos aside and it's about the information getting out there. Coves explained that this guy I can't pronounce was an anti-Semite with above average education about Jews. Do you always notice how when you say anything about these guys, they try and attack your intelligence?
Oh yeah.
It's always the way. Oh, he's an idiot. They always try and attack you. He's above average intelligence. They always try and talk down to you like that. So do it back to them. They don't like it. But it's the fact that they do attack
Yeah.
your intelligence. I've noticed that on a level. It's very, very odd as well. It's a common denominator. Shmuley's at it all the time.
Oh God.
And
Vile
so it
cretin.
goes on. I know. Dildo Rabbi. He knows I'm part of the Lubavitch movement. Coves and EMIH, which is the board that he's part of, had a closed relationship with Orban's government. The rabbi joked that he feels honoured to have such a role in the eyes of our enemies, and concerning on one hand, but on the other, if your enemies curse you, it praises you. This is the twisted inversion of everything they say. They say bad is good, good is bad. If you read the Twilight language
Yep.
of what they say, everything is inverted. So they see good and evil as the same, really. So he's nodding that he's part of this as well, when you can read the twilight language of the article. Better than I just read the article out. Apologies. But it's obvious that these guys are surrounded by Chabad Lubavitch, a tiny sect of the Hasidic Jewish Orthodox faith, tiny sect, and they have messianic overtones that we talk about all the time, which is why you're seeing what you are seeing in the Middle East playing out.
Well, it's an interesting one with Orban, because Orban was kind of like the prelude to Trump in a way in Europe, in the sense of he came out with a very anti-immigration rhetoric at the time when there was mass immigration into Sweden, into Germany, and obviously those societies were having a number of issues as a result. You know, he was very much the first government to start calling out the EU in that principle. He even started calling out NATO and so on. He cozied up with Russia when other NATO and European countries were not. And this was pre the invasion of Ukraine. This dates back to even pre the invasion of Crimea. So he was kind of seen as this freedom of speech, right of center, freedom of expression type hero in the eyes of so many people. But from day dot, he was a bosom buddy of Netanyahu. And when you look at anyone who claims to be remotely alternative or remotely anti-system, whether that's him, whether that's some people still today look at Putin as that figure as well, they're always very, very cozy when it comes to their relationship with Netanyahu and Israel. So, as Gaz calls it, the end-level boss, where everyone knows that ultimately they can fall out with people here and there, they can have disagreements, but when it comes to the end-level boss, everyone knows their place. And there isn't really a nation anywhere in the world apart from Iran who have anything but a close relationship with Israel and do pretty much whatever they like. Even the ones that are being looked at as the other side of this Third World War conflict, Russia very close with Israel, China are pretty close with Israel. So it's a really bizarre one, but it's very clear to see, like you say, mate, when you take one step back, you see pictures of these Chabad people sat with Putin, you see them sat with Trump, you see them sat with Zelensky. Their fingers are literally everywhere, and it's far too coincidental to say it has no influence on the policy of those countries, given all of them are on the same page when it comes to that particular issue. Right, so we're going to see
what's happening in the Middle East, mate. So, if you just, as you say, at the other end, look at what's happening in the Middle East. Just quickly to say, I put a video about Putin yesterday, and it blatantly shows he was raised by these Chabad guys. He was raised by them. Still, people in the comments were like, "No, I don't believe this is true."
No, you don't want to believe this is true. It's the truth.
You don't want to believe, unfortunately.
Well, he was absolutely groomed to take over the presidency of Russia from Yeltsin, wasn't he? He was very much, everything that he did was very much leading him to the position that he is now in. And they don't do that. You don't rule a country as big and as influential as Russia for as many years as he has, unless you're acceptable. Right, so we're going to talk about these tariffs now, and this inevitable global trade war that is going to start as a result. Now, there's a lot of things to unpack here. You could argue and sit here as many, America first, if there is any of those that exist still. We'll sit and say, well, if you put tariffs on the importation of things that we make in this country, like cars and so on, it seems to be one of the major ones, then it makes it more expensive for an American citizen to buy a European car, let's say a BMW, a Volvo, whatever it might be. So it encourages them to buy homemade cars made in America, your Chevrolets, your Dodge, things like that. That makes sense. That logic makes some sense there. You make it cheaper, you make it more appealing and more attractive to buy homegrown products, whether that be as a consumer directly or whether that be as a business selling products. You make it more attractive to buy products made in your country. You put your country's workers first. You encourage the manufacturing process and distribution process to happen within your country, not elsewhere. That makes some sense. I do understand that. However, what this is doing is actually just kind of messing it up for everyone. It's meaning that people in America now have less freedom of choice in terms of what they buy, because the tariffs are making certain things so much more expensive that it's actually not a choice they can make anymore. And secondly, it is harming American companies. This has been shown. Now, whether in the long term it does, I don't know. But at the moment, it definitely is. But the reason I think this is an important story to cover is because of the fallout from this, and the fallout was only just begun. Stock markets have dropped $2 trillion yesterday, and people will listen and say, well, how does that affect me as a stock market? You know, how does that affect me going about my life? Well, anything like that does affect you going about your life, because it affects prices, it affects the ability to get things like mortgages, loans, credit, it affects the ability to the value of cash and the value of money, inflation, X, Y, and Z. All of those things are affected by the stock markets. Hence why really they can crash a stock market and make everything that you do significantly more expensive like that. So obviously it does affect everybody. But the thing that I think is most important to talk about here, and we discussed this previously, Rich, where they just seem to be coming at people from all angles, wanting people constantly in a state of anxiety, a state of unease, a state of looking around going, geez, what's coming next? Well, there's nothing more uncertain than financial uncertainty at this time for so many people. Many people are literally living week to week, day to day, in many cases, struggling to put food on the table, struggling to put the heating on, struggling to put a roof over their heads, run a car, get to work, find work, all of those things, get themselves out of debt. And this is not going to do anything except amplify that. Because if you don't know where you stand, you don't know what that means for jobs. There's already talks of there having to be huge job cuts in manufacturing industries, such as cars being a major one because of these tariffs. Now, everybody now is sat in a state of anxiety of thinking, what's going to happen here? I don't know. Is this going to affect me? Is it not? Is this going to go on for 5 minutes? Is this going to go on for 5 years? What's China going to do in retaliation that may impact the rest of the world's markets as well? It's all very... In a sense, Trump, for me, is just acting like a playground bully. And this is a complete failure of diplomacy, in my opinion, where if you are a proper deal maker, as he claims to be, then you can reach situations where you reach agreements without having to do something like this and chuck the world up in the air and affect both the citizens of yours at home that you're meant to represent and support and help, and also affect citizens around the world and companies around the world and other people that have jobs around the world, and put it into such a state of uncertainty and probably go into a trade war with China, who have a lot more power than America these days when it comes to the manufacturing industry. What's your take on this, mate?
I think it's many things, as it always is, moving around of the chessboard. Clearly, if you're pulling yourself away from certain other allies, you're going towards others. It's how it works. It's the opposite effect. So they're obviously aligning themselves with other countries at the moment. And you're going to say, obviously, Russia's going to be in there with them, Israel. And I actually expect China to pull in on that side as well in terms of their AI tech. Remember, 500 billions going into these infrastructure of the Stargate thing. And I've looked into this, and the US and China share over, and I can't remember the actual number, but it's tens of thousands of artificial intelligence research papers between the two universities, the main universities in China and in the US. They're going back and forward, these students. There's something happening in the background. So I see more of an alliance between China, Russia, Israel, and America. But America is the whipping boy. It's the scapegoat. It's going to go down. It's going to be used. Absolutely. But it kind of is a change here. So obviously he's playing that role. Remember what the end game is. The old global CEO, global corporation, in the end, very much involves artificial intelligence. I think a lot of people are also missing the fact that when you say home created, like cars built they might be built in the US, but where are the parts coming from? Where the original parts
steel is a massive one, isn't it, in Canada, that they're talking about the rising import costs, which is going to affect manufacturers in the States. Very simplistic to just chuck tariffs on everything. Very simplistic.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And he's obviously causing chaos across the board. He's a chaos engine. That's what he's there for. I think we'll just see a realigning of all the countries and the on, at least on the political stage, political theatre, the realigning of the allies of what it is. And you're going to have the Europeans. We've got clearly with them surrounding us, trying to get get Greenland for themselves, which have occult reasons for that, technocracy reasons for that, as your dad has covered in this week's Dot Connector. It seems to me that the European countries are being completely isolated.
Yep.
I mean, we could turn that into an advantage at some point, but it seems to be the way. And I think people need to wake up to that. When you're supporting Trump, actually what you're doing is isolating yourself in this small lock of being dependent on. We're a tiny island.
Yeah, we
Remember?
are. We are, and I think you mentioned a good point there when you say America is the whipping boy, because it always has been. And Americans have been raised with this concept: they're the greatest country in the world, they're the home of the free world, the leader of the free world. Basically, they've just got the biggest military. That's the only claim to anything that Americans actually have. They have one of the worst societies in terms of violence. They have one of the worst societies in terms of health. Their food is some of the most toxic and processed. They have, like you say, good point. They have one of the highest amounts of drug intake, whether that be recreational drugs, whether that be pharmaceutical drugs on a daily basis just to survive. And it's incredibly sad to see, because I mean, I love America. I've been there probably 15, 20 times in my life. I'd move to Nashville, Tennessee tomorrow. I absolutely love America. And I've met some amazing people over there. And there's so much about American culture that is really, really cool. But they are being shafted completely while being told that they are the pinnacle. You know, anyone that lives in a country here in Europe, a nice country and a nice with a cool culture and a rich culture, you know, whether that be your Italy's, your Scandinavia, your France, somewhere like that, you're going to go to America and go, what the hell is this place, man? What the hell is this place? Like, I remember years ago when the Prime Minister of Norway was over in America. I don't know if you remember this. It was during Trump's first presidency. And he said, Trump had done a press conference and said, why does nobody ever move to America from Norway? They always come from shithole countries. Do you remember
that? Rings a bell. Rings a bell.
Well, I remember all the comments of people in Norway going, free healthcare, we get a percentage of like oil sales, free society, X, Y, and Z, and just listed all these reasons. And then someone put up a picture of Norway and someone put up a picture of central Chicago, and you're like, that's why they're not coming, mate. That's why they're not coming. The whole point that America is the pinnacle of where you need to be is a dream. You know, as Bill Gates said, they call it the American dream because you've got to be asleep to believe it. And it's very, very true. And I feel sad for a lot of Americans because of that. So, yeah, right, where we go next?
Well, as you say, it's a complete fantasy, and it was ruled out of the British Empire originally anyway, and a lot of Freemasons were in the founding of it. So it's from the start, it's been, I believe, as much as China is the project for the technocracy, America was the project of how do we get these supposed illusion of freedom through the door, whilst we just carry on what we're doing in the background. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, I agree. America is the cult's testing plant, and if it works there, they push it out across the rest of the world, and people just say that as American culture spreading. Well, it's not. It's the cult's culture spreading.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Even you just got to look at Capitol Hill, Capitoline Hill, Rome, Maryland, which is Washington, D.C., and realise that it's the Roman Empire that went over there and still controlled it today. MP tells Sky News that she was targeted online by Tate Brothers after Commons contribution. So this is actually quite. I've always had issues with the Tate brothers. I used to work in the self-development world, making video content in there, and they were classic self-development gurus coming in, making a lot of noise. There's the whole allusion to the CIA in the background with their father, who was a world champion chess player. It seems to be he was involved with the CIA. They've got to where they are, not through talent, have they? Really? Come on. So there's clearly something going on there. I would hazard a guess that they're not of the faith that they say they are, but also they're vile, quite frankly, aren't they? They are vile human beings, regardless if it's a character or not. Their presentation of who they are. But an MP has told Sky News she was attacked online by the Tate brothers after she participated in a debate in the House of Commons about violence against women. You would have thought, Tate's, just stay out of this one. You know, you're in enough trouble. The controversial duo, Andrew and Christian Tate, are facing charges of rape and human trafficking in the UK, of which they deny. And there's that's still open to the fact that they're innocent until proven guilty. But they are still very active online. And according to Sorcha Eastwood, the MP for Lagan Valley, are targeting her. Now, what they said to her was quite vile, knowing that the audience that you have and the audience that you've fostered are going to be these kind of, macho men who think they're real men, but they're just full of testosterone and vinegar. And they're going to be quite violent. You've fostered that as an audience. So they said to her, when she was talking about Musk, I think they commented on a comment that she did. They said about her, MP, nice target. Can we sue her? Nice target. And then she got lots of abuse at like real threats from them. They know, like Elon Musk's the kingmaker. If you get on his show and he retweets you or whatever, you know that you're gonna increase your followers. They know the impact they have on their audience, so they obviously set their rabid lunatic wolves on them, and it's just the sort of thing is sort of that's accepted, is it? And that's accepted to be able to behave like that and stay on these platforms. You get taken off for saying anything about Israel, but that sort of behaviour, that's a threatening behaviour, knowing the audience that you've got. She says, I was really concerned. I was concerned because to me that is a direct attack, for a want of a better phrase, on me serving constituents. I couldn't believe that they decided to pick on this random Northern Irish MP. The fact that it wasn't even about them, that is something I didn't go looking for. So she didn't comment on theirs. It was a comment on Elon Musk's. It doesn't say what the original comment was. I tried to find it. But, they've set their audience on him, on her even. And she was a victim of sexual abuse herself. So, what is this world coming to, Jay?
Yeah, it's insane. And that sort of stuff happens quite a lot online. And I think, there's a whole debate, isn't there, about online harms and protecting people online. And we know the system are very, very happy to give you their answer to it, which is this online harms bill. And shows like Adolescence, which I know you and Gaz covered earlier in the week, are trying to push a certain type of mindset and agenda onto people in terms of what needs to happen, essentially. But it's not a black and white argument. I was thinking this morning about another subject, is everybody wants to oversimplify arguments into right, wrong, black, white, good guy, bad guy, when, okay, there is some instances when that is applicable. But in the vast majority of cases, the truth is somewhere in the shade of grey. Do we need to protect kids from being radicalised and adults being radicalised and abused online? Yeah, that needs to happen. Because if you think about it, when me and you were at school, Rich, if you were getting bullied at school, when you got home, it stopped. When you got in your front door, you were safe. Your parents knew once you were in your house, and as a parent, you knew once your kids were in the house, they were safe. You could protect them. Whereas now, because of social media, that's not the case. Your kid can be in their bedroom and you think they're safe playing Xbox when in fact they're getting abused to the point they're committing suicide, and that does happen. Or they're getting radicalised online by seeing certain piece of content. Yes, that does happen. Of course it does. The answer to it is not the online harms bill, because that's not about doing that. Hence why, they can censor content questioning a COVID vaccine online, but the Taliban still have Twitter. Just, if they really, and there's still, child porn on these platforms. That doesn't, they're not doing the thing they're claiming to do. If they really wanted to protect, they'd start there. They wouldn't start with somebody, telling somebody with blue hair that they're not really a man. That wouldn't be your first point of call. It would be those areas that I just mentioned. So it's not a black and white argument. And is there some content out there, and have the Tates been party to that is, pretty extreme in terms of what it's saying about people? Yeah, there is. There absolutely is. And the problem you have with the likes of the Tates, now I agree with a very small percentage of what the Tates say when they talk about, as a man, it's important to, take care of yourself, work out, be, a solution to people around you in terms of fixing problems. I do agree with that. I think we're quite similar, Rich, in terms of our attitudes towards be it the man's role in a family, our job's to provide and protect, and that has kind of been lost, I think, in the last generation of men. That I agree with. The rest of it, I don't agree with any of that. I think this is another conversation that needs to be had about the responsibility you have when you have a large following, when you have influence, when people are listening and hanging on every word you say, because some people will take everything you say literally. Some people will interpret it in a different way. And I think you need to be respectful of that if you have a large following, because people can go off and do things based on your actions. That's not necessarily your fault. You could stand there and say, well, I didn't tell someone to go and, abuse this person. But on the flip side, you knew when you said that what was going to happen. So therefore, you just need to be, responsible when it comes to that. And I do think there is a bit of irresponsibility when it comes to a lot of the words that they say and how they think people are going to interpret them. Like the other week, I saw one where Andrew Tate was talking about, kids shouldn't see their father, that they shouldn't be in their lives. Your job's to have the kid and then get on with your life. It's like, well, actually, half the reason that this generation has a load of weak beta men that don't know how to treat women, don't know how to look after themselves, are getting overweight, are becoming pathetic, double mask wearing, I'm terrified of the world people, is because they haven't had a strong male figure around them. That's why there's so many, the amount of parents you see now that are single parents. And a lot of that, for me, is then going to lead to further issues in generations to come where there's not a male figure around, particularly for young men. It's so important. So important. How many young men, young kids look up to particularly boys, look up to their dad? Most, I would suggest. How many young girls learn how a man should treat them by seeing how their dad treats their mum? It's so important. So important in a relationship with your father. So I think that's a ridiculous thing for him to have said. And again, a massive lack of responsibility, because I would assume not probably a large number, because I'd hope people have their own intelligence, but how many young dads would have read that, seen that, watched that and gone, yeah, right. And walked away as a result, or thought, I'm not going to make an effort as a result because, Andrew Tate, this guy I look up to, says that, so I'll do it too. That's where I think your responsibility when you have a following is very, very important.
Yeah, I think the issue there is looking up to someone like Andrew Tate anyway. You're off to a bad start. There's something wrong from they're in my personal opinion, they're predators for people that are lost in the first place. So that's what they are. But this guy, this is what they said. They said, MP, nice target. Can we sue her? Nice target. You can't rephrase that in any way. No. You are wanting to set your followers on her. That is clear as day as what you're saying. So, it's not as if they've just said, oh, that wasn't a very nice person, maybe she needs to learn better. Nice target is the terminology.
And that's the joke, is the a lot of people are very comfortable with certain behaviours as long as their side's doing it. So all those people that target Andrew Tate, targeted Tristan Tate, have said all these things about them. No, they're wrong. That's disgusting. You're targeting them. Well, but then when they suggest you target others, that's okay, because they're on your side. So it's, the justification that people have that it's okay when we do it, when our side do it, it's fine. It's just insane. For me, a simple way of looking at it, if you've got to look at who's doing something before deciding whether you oppose it or support it, you lost the plot. Completely lost the plot. Behaviour is right or wrong, not who's doing it. Right, so this story is a bit of a weird one, Rich, but I only wanted to bring this up because, funnily enough, the exact same thing happened yesterday in my village, and I didn't know about this till late last night. But this is the story from the Daily Express. Crying children and teacher bleeding at school lockdown in Hartlepool, right? So this is yesterday. 2 teenagers have been arrested on suspicion of assault at school as it was plunged into lockdown as a precaution. Now, the assault bit didn't happen, but in my village yesterday, the primary school was put into lockdown because they'd had a phone call saying that there was a bomb planted in a car outside, and the car that was described was parked outside. Now, it turned out to be a hoax, and nobody was hurt, and I think everything cracked on as normal an hour or so later once the police and bomb squads had arrived. But for that period, same with this story here, parents are going to be losing their minds at home. Teachers are going to be absolutely terrified in school. Kids are going to be terrified and traumatized in school. How many kids at this school and at the one in my village in South Derbyshire won't want to have gone to school today because they'll be terrified? How many parents will be sat at work right now thinking, am I going to get a call in a minute because of this? And the reason I wanted to bring it up, not because it's an absolutely enormous story compared to some of the other ones we're discussing, but we always talk about when something comes from nowhere and then suddenly there's 2 or 3 instances of this. Is that a trend? Is that something starting to happen? Now, over the years in America, there has been a series of school shootings, which has claimed the lives of a number of children, to the point where there's armed guards, there's now large fences and so on around schools, and parents, rightly and understandably so, are apprehensive and scared about sending their kids into school. There's obviously been large calls from the anti-gun lobbies about the reason these shootings are happening is because guns are legal, when I don't think it's quite as simplistic as that. Now, in the UK, that kind of safety in school has never been in question, really, in terms of, widespread. Kids have fights at school, whatever, people get hurt. That sort of stuff's always happened. Going back to when we were at school, Rich, people would have a scrap and then you'd get on with your life. It's now got more and more aggressive in recent years, with kids bringing knives to school and people getting attacked in school and on school buses and to and from school and so on. That sort of thing's been progressing gradually over the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years, particularly the last 5, in the inner cities anyway. But the concept of schools going into lockdown, gates being shut, parents trying to fight to find out what on earth is going on, this has happened now a number of times, and there's a number of stories from 2025 alone that are similar to this. Again, going back to a couple of months ago probably now, the high school in the next town to me went into lockdown because somebody was running around with a knife in the town. And it's a weird little town. It's got literally a handful of scattered houses and a high school, which kind of all the local villages, everyone goes to that high school. So that's why it's there. But my next door neighbour, he's 17, he's in the sixth form at that high school. So when he got home from school, I went and knocked on the door, like, what the hell's happened, mate? You all right? And and he obviously described that story. But at the same time, you had all the parents on the local Facebook group going, what's going on? I've had a message from my kids saying they've been shut in the school hall. What's happening? No one's telling us anything. And again, you're at a point of anxiety. Given what happened not too long ago in Southport, which absolutely then will have, spiked the fear and anxiety within parents, particularly of younger children, of what's going to happen when they go to clubs, what's going to happen when they go to school, when they're not with me, when they're outside of my control, what could potentially happen to them. I feel this is the start of something, Rich. I don't know what you think, mate, but I feel this is a way of, again, attacking people's anxiety, attacking people's ability to, I guess, feel comfortable and at home in the world. We've spoken about this previously. I think me and Gaz spoke about it on Tuesday, it might have been. That what's happened for a number of years now is they're trying to make you feel uncomfortable and nervous in a position where you would normally have felt safe. Whether that's in a public domain, like a sports stadium, a shopping centre, a restaurant, sending your kids to school in this instance. And I'm not saying all of these situations are manipulated, but I'm saying it's very interesting that this hasn't happened, and now all of a sudden it seems to be happening, fairly frequently, where parents are going to reach the point, if this continues to happen, where they're actually apprehensive and terrified and maybe not wanting to send their kids into school. And as we always know, mate, there will be a solution. It'll be carefully, Blue Peter style. Here's one I made earlier. It'll be carefully planned and sat there in the background already. What that solution looks like, we can conjecture about. But I don't think this is all organic. What's your take, mate?
I think the reporting on it is important as well, the other level of it. So the situation can be organic or cannot be, but the reporting on it can be, it's kind of the way it's framed. So they can work with anything. So that the outcome of that one, from what you're describing, would be naturally you'd want to keep your kids at home, homeschool, stay in the house, everybody stay in. Well, you're locked down yourself then, haven't you? And then obviously you're all working from home on the computer. You're all pretty much self-employed, or companies are spread out. Humans aren't getting together. We see that coming, and you're more reliant on technology. So whether that's a purposeful outcome, it doesn't really matter, because they can use the Lego bricks in the box however they want. They just need to get the bricks in there. So you have to kind of be aware of what the outcome is. And I feel that with that one is, as you say, it's too scary to go outside. Let's keep everyone in. They got the lockdown thing there. So you either locked down at school, or it's better to be locked down or locked in at home. Stay in your house. We saw that whole psyop of stay in your house. And I think that is something that we're going to see more of. The policies now are in place to lock down kids at school. Well, hang on a minute. I'm not having you lock down my child at school. I'll decide whether he goes to school, stays at school, comes home, not the other way around. That's not how it works. Well, and this taking away of these parenting rights from their kid. It's that's my child to look after. That's not yours to. And we've had this. We have letters through from people through saying attendance records. Now, who the hell are you to tell me when my child should go to school? If he's ill, he's ill, or she's ill, she's ill. I had 6 months off when I was a kid because I was in hospital. Like, it wasn't around then. We weren't mad. as much
No, we
then in
weren't.
the
And
80s.
also, like, I think about the primary school I went to on the Isle of Wight, my niece and nephew went to as well, obviously years later. There wasn't big, 10-foot fences around it when I went there. They didn't lock the gates when all the kids were in there when I went there. So what's happened? What the change in society, the change in all of that is insane. They'll justify it by saying it's safety, but I'm not quite so sure. I'm not quite so sure. And I think what's important here, just to finish on this story, is this is something we've just literally seen in the last 24 hours. And I'm not going to say that, we've got all the answers in terms of what this means, but I think it's important to highlight, because getting out ahead of stuff is important, because it's very well and good saying, oh, look, I knew that was going to happen. Whereas I think talking about it before it potentially happens and asking the question, is there a trend here? So what we'll do, we've started a new email address, which is just called trending@iconic.com. If you have any stories that you've seen or in your local community, wherever you're watching this in the world, that kind of, I guess, would add to this in terms of this is happening more widespread than perhaps we think, then please fire that into us, because we'd love to cover that, because the whole point of this program is to highlight stories that are not being highlighted in the rest of the world, and notice the trends and see the different things that maybe appear disconnected that are happening that actually are fundamentally connected. So we've started that email, and any stories that you want to send us, please fire them into that. Right, we got a hilarious story today, Rich, rather than a good news story. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
This is the finish. This is from Stoke. This is from Stoke-on-Trent Live. Jeez, sounds exciting. Motorists are warned to stop driving forward into car spaces from April. Right. Drivers have been urged to ditch a bad parking habit to avoid soaring fuel bills in April. Motorists have been warned to stop driving forwards into parking spaces to reduce climate change. I don't know where to go with that. I don't know where to go with that. I mean, reversing into a space is better because it's easier, but it's easier to get out. Unless you actually, what if you go into the supermarket and you want to put your shopping in the boot? It's a lot easier if you drive your car in forwards, isn't it? Because your boot's then got space.
That's honestly a good point, isn't it? How you get your legs between the other car behind you and the boot up and the kids' trolley in there as well.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know. Maybe it's about crushing legs. They want to accidentally put someone else's foot on the accelerator from behind you and just wedge you between the two cars. I don't know. Bodies in the boot.
It's mental.
I have no idea. I don't understand. April the 1st, was it?
Well, apparently. I don't understand how... no, it's April the 2nd, this story. I don't understand. I thought Gareth sent me this, and when you just said that, I thought he's done me here. This is not real, but it is. I don't understand, and if anyone's watching who understands cars, please comment or send into that email address. How does driving forwards cost more fuel than driving in backwards? I don't get that. I mean, I might be being an idiot. I'm not a car fan, so if I am being an idiot, please point it out. But I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, it's the equivalent of going the same way round in a supermarket, isn't it? To avoid walking towards each other when there's a mythical flu going around. Now we've got driving. Don't drive towards each other. So what we'll have is dual carriageways of everyone driving one way around the world in one direction.
I'll miss me turn off. Oh, sorry, love. I'll be home in a week. Missed the turn in.
Go all the way around.
Can't go back now.
Yeah. The world's just one big roundabout now.
Honestly,
it's just, yeah.
I literally read these and I'm like, someone's having a laugh, surely. But then you look deeper into it and you're like, no, that's actually real. That's actually real. Yeah. I think, it's like you just pointed out a minute ago about, when your kids should be where they should be, and that's not up to the state. The amount of finite control and dictating now that they want to have over your life is just insane. That you're being encouraged to go reversing into a car parking space. That's a news story. That's not just somebody tweeting saying, "Oh, I've noticed this." No, this is a news story. Like, what have we come to, man? Honestly, it's embarrassing.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? It's demoralising.
It's funny. This is though.
It's all supposed to be demoralising if you obviously take it seriously. They're talking to you as if you're children, if you're idiots, if you're simpletons, and you need to be told how to reverse in and out of a parking space. They're talking to you. It's not so much the actual idea. It's more the undertones of it. We're going to torture you like you're all absolute morons.
I know.
And that's the way you're going to start to believe that you are, even though at your core you are an idiot, you are stupid. How many people are going to speak up about it? Many people will, but a lot of people went one way around a supermarket with a face
true.
shield on. So
I got a great way to deal with anyone that has an issue with how you park in the space. If you drive forward, I drive deliberately forwards now every time just to make a point, especially if I go to Stoke. Oh, God knows why I'd want to go to Stoke. But if I drive forward into a space, someone goes, hang on, can I just have a word a sec? Yeah, 1 minute.
10
That's
minutes
how you
later.
deal with people like that. Just ignore them.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. That's been a good show this morning, Rich. That's been good fun, mate. It's been nice to talk to you as always. It's good fun to see your face in the mornings. It sets me up for the day.
It will be. Well, I'll be seeing you in April, late April, won't we? We've got an event coming up.
We do. We have Iconic live in Sutton Coldfield in Birmingham on Good Friday. Second one we've ever done. We did one in Derby last March, which was really good fun. So still a few tickets remaining for the one in Sutton Coldfield. So as many of you that can make it, it will be a good evening, a combination of a bit of humour, some insightful information, a bit of inspiration, hopefully. And it'll be all 5 of us on stage, Rich, myself, Gareth, David and Christiana. And it's slightly more relaxed than a formal lecture. It's more of an interaction between the audience and an interaction between the 5 of us. Because the world is insane and sometimes it's funny to point out various parts of it. And, you know, there is a lot of darkness out there, but there's also a lot of light and that needs highlighting as well. So we'll put the link to the tickets in the description of this episode if you want to head over there. There'll be some amusing videos, I'm sure, of outtakes from this programme, which we'll play. Gareth will be beeped out a hell of a lot, I would expect.
Yeah.
Rich will be doing his face exercises. And, there you go. Every morning. Every morning.
Yep. Every
right.
morning.
Thank you so much for tuning with us all week, everybody. I'll be back on Monday with Gareth. Rich will be back on Wednesday with Gareth. Until then, have a fantastic weekend. Keep smiling. And remember, the world might be insane, but you don't have to be.
I'll give you one of them. That's a bye.